without further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Tom, who will, as I've said, be talking to us about DataMapsWales. And Tom, it's over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I'll just share my screen. Hi everyone, thanks for coming. So I'm Tom Colley, lead developer in the Data and Geography Department in Welsh Government. So we're a central department that provides sort of geographic data support, analysis, and expertise to the wider Welsh Government, all sorts of cross-cutting across policy areas, and also providing support to the wider public sector community. So we offer, we've got a couple of software products and platforms, the main one of which is DataMapsWales. So I'm the technical lead for that one. I'm going to be talking a little bit about geographic data and how it's used in DataMapsWales today. So we're going to look at how DataMapsWales has been used to promote engagement, collaboration and innovation across the public sector in Wales. Look very briefly at geography, location, data and the sort of situation around geospatial data in the UK at the moment, how we access data in a secure way through DataMapsWales, how that data is used to support policy making, decision making, and then we'll have time for some questions at the end. So geography is the study of places and their relationships between people and their environments. Fundamental principle of geography is that location is important in all our lives. Geography helps us to understand what has happened, what is happening and what will happen. Location data informs us where people and objects are in relation to a particular geographic area. A number of different terms that are used to describe sort of, geographic information. So you might be more familiar with geographic data, geospatial data, geographic information, or spatial data, all different terms for exactly the same thing. Using location and geography, we can integrate, analyze and understand all sorts of different types of data. Everything happens somewhere, everywhere has a location. So examples of geographic data include schools, roads, health services, areas of deprivation, environmental factors such as flooding. So all of these different types of data are held on DataMapsWales. So sort of state of geospatial in the UK. In 2018, the Geospatial Commission was established. It's responsible for setting the UK's geospatial strategy and coordinating public sector use of geospatial information. Geospatial Commission's committed to invest in national location data, and it makes lots of data freely available across the public sector using the Public Sector Geospatial Agreement. And this gives public sector organisations unlimited access to all Ordnance Survey data, aerial imagery from a project called APGB, and other data sets such as height data. UK's geospatial strategy sets a vision that by 2025 the UK will have a coherent national location data framework. And the UK has chosen to adopt the United Nations Integrated Geospatial Information Framework to help guide that. And the Geospatial Commission and Ordnance Survey represent the UK on discussions at a global level and ensure we meet and maintain global geospatial standards. So this is where DataMapsWales comes into it, I suppose, in enabling the sort of the sharing and the use of all of this geographic data. The power of geographic data increases when it is reused by more people and organisations. And that's what DataMapsWales aims to support. been developing this over the last sort of 5 years as DataMapWales, but the sort of with the Welsh Government geospatial platform goes back to, it started in 2010 with a product called Flare, which was a partnership between Natural Resource Wales and Welsh Government, and it was set up initially to meet the requirements of a bit of European legislation called Inspire, which mandated that certain environmental data sets needed to be shared, so the spatial data sets that needed to be shared. So that was initially launched in 2010. Didn't have any map functionality initially. It was just a data catalog, and then the map functionality within Flare was released, I think, around 2014, but it was quite limited in what it could do and the data sets that it offered. So in 2018, discovery work started looking at a replacement for Flare and how we can incorporate the evolving platform requirements that had been gathered from the users. The development started in 2019. Later that year, we had a public vote on what the new platform should be called, and the result of that was MapDataCymru. DataMapWales was the new name. So in 2020, DataMapWales was crucial in supporting Welsh Government's response to COVID-19. So we loaded lots of data sets for rest centres, vaccination centres, used spatial analysis to look at where the best places were for those kind of resources, analysing how long it takes to drive from communities to try and ensure that everybody had access. Then moved into sort of the beta phase of development in March 2021, and new applications were developed for active travel and an application called Jigsaw, which is to support data sharing for emergency response. We then went live in spring of this year, and we continue to develop new functionality, which we'll look at later. So throughout DataMapWales development, we've used this agile approach. So we've engaged with users and taken requirements in. We do sort of short periods of development for specific functionality, and then take feedback from that functionality and use that to kind of steer the future developments. It's worked really well. So there's 3 key components in DataMapWales, which we're going to have a look at now in a quick demo. So just stop this presentation. So here we go. This is the landing page for the DataMapWales website. So the first of the components is the data catalog. So you've got a search function on the main page, or you can click on this link to view the catalog. See here that we've currently got just over 500 publicly accessible records in the catalog. So most of those are spatial data sets. We've also got some maps and a handful of documents which are not actual spatial data, but have some sort of relationship to spatial data. So you can see here that we can search by keywords. You can filter down by the type of resource that you'd like, the category of the resource. So we've got boundary data, climate data, economy, environment, transportation, lots of different categories. And then you can also filter by the organisation that owns the data. You see that Welsh Government and Natural Resource Wales are the make up the bulk of the data sets that are currently on DataMapsWales, but more and more we're getting data that's published from local authorities and other public sector organisations. You say only seeing public data sets here, but when we logged in, you see a lot more stuff that's been published by local authorities and other organisations for internal use at the moment, but that they haven't made public as yet. So if we click on one of these catalogue entries, you get the resource page of the catalogue. So this shows a preview map with the data on there. So that's interactive. You can zoom in, you can click on features to find out information about them. Then shows the metadata for the data set. So it gives it an abstract, which is just sort of textual description of the data. You've got information about when data was created, which license it's been made available under. So this has been made available under the terms of the Public Sector Geospatial Agreement, which I mentioned earlier. That usually means that the data has been derived from one of the Ordnance Survey data sets that is available under that agreement. So it can be freely published, but there are terms and conditions on how the data can be used. So we link through to the Ordnance Survey licensing information there. A lot of other information is published under the OGL, the Open Geospatial License, Open Government License, which is gives sort of freer use of the data. Then got a link to the full metadata for the data set. So there's lots more information that can be captured in the metadata there, and that's sort of the metadata formats that are used are compliant with the Inspire legislation that I mentioned earlier. Then we've got the ways that you can use the data outside of DataMapsWales. So the OWS endpoints can be used to load this data into various desktop GIS systems, or to be used in other applications such as sort of local authority GIS systems or web mapping applications that they've got. Those links will provide live access to the data so that it can be presented out in other applications, but as soon as it's updated on DataMapsWales, it'll be reflected in any other applications that are consuming the data through those links. So WMS is short for Web Mapping Service, which provides styled versions of the data. So that's what we're seeing on this map. So you get the features rendered out according to style sheets that have been loaded in DataMapsWales, and they get served as sort of tiled images. And WFS stands for Web Feature Service. That will actually serve up the data in its raw form. So in this case, it's line data. So WFS will actually serve up each point of that line, and that's more useful in desktop GIS systems where somebody wants to interact with the data, so filter it down by location or filter down by other attributes. It also with the correct permissions applied, would allow somebody to edit that data remotely in other systems. When we look at the active travel system in a little bit, it's useful for that sort of case. Also got the option to download the data in different formats, so you can download it non-spatially as CSV, which will just give you the attribute information, and then there's or Excel, and then there are other standard spatial formats. So the services and the downloads that we supply all come from the Open Geospatial Consortium standards, so that they can be used as easily as possible in lots of different systems. So everything that we do tries to adhere to those geospatial standards. And we've also tried to provide sort of help documentation and videos to try and make it as easy as possible to use these parts of DataMapWales. So we got lots of content there to find out more about the services and the standards that we're making available. Also got linked catalog items here, so you can see if this data is being used in any maps on DataMapWales, or if it's part of any layer groups on DataMapWales. They're listed here. So if I click there, you can see that this layer is used in the Valleys Task Force map. So again, it takes you to the catalog page, which gives you the description of this map and all of the other metadata. And then we can see here that this map actually uses 32 different data sets. So we've got statistical data sets on employment rates, economic inactivity. We've got boundary data sets for the Valleys Task Force area, schools. We've got the Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation layers in there. Senedd constituency boundaries, local authority boundaries. There's the active travel routes. And if we want to view this data in the map viewer, you can click on that button there. So this is the DataMapWales map viewer. You see on the left-hand side, you've got the table of contents where all of those layers are preloaded. By default, most of them are turned off. We can just see the Valleys Task Force boundary there, but we can turn on electoral wards. Got folders that group data sets together. So here we've got an education folder, which has got separate layers for independent schools, nursery schools, special schools, middle schools, secondary schools. And then you can click on any of those features on the map to find out the attribute data that's behind those. So if you're not familiar with how spatial data works, you can think of it as a spreadsheet where each feature on the map, it represents a row in the spreadsheet table, and then you can have any number of columns against that feature. So in this case, we've got the unique property reference number, which is a standard way of identifying properties. And one of the things that we're really encouraging is the use of the UPRN in data sets, because it's really powerful when you come to trying to link different data sets together. If they all use the UPRN to identify properties, then it makes it really easy to combine different data sets without having to try and match other forms of address. We've then got the school code, which is sort of the unique identifier for schools. The name of the school, the language that the school teaches in, status, the gender of the school, the type, the easting and northing, which shows coordinates where it is, and then those coordinates in latitude and longitude. But depending on the data set, you get different attributes for different types of data. So if instead we look at the Valleys Task Force boundary and click there, you see that this just has a single attribute, which is called name, and it just says that it is the Valleys Task Force boundary. So yeah, that layer, sort of its sole purpose is to show an area on the map. It doesn't have any further useful attribute data behind it. And just to sort of reinforce the fact that essentially the data is held in a sort of tabular format, we can actually have a look at one of these layers and view the data as an attribute table. And here we can see the same information, but as I was saying, each one of these rows relates to a single point on the map. So you can press the button there just to zoom in to that specific feature on the map. And then each column is represented there. We've got the ability to be able to filter down records by their attribute information. So here we're now just seeing the bilingual schools in the table. You see that it's filtered down to just 26 schools now, and pressing this button syncs the map with that filter. So if I zoom out now, you see that all of the other dots on the map are hidden, and very easy to see because we've got all the other layers turned on as well. But that will just show those 26 bilingual schools on the map. If we then wanted to look at which of those bilingual schools closed, find that none of them are. But you can combine filters there, just as you would in Excel, to be able to sort of interrogate the data that way. And what you're also able to do then is download that data. Again, like we saw in the catalogue, you can download it in spatial formats or as a CSV, and you can choose to download the data with the filter applied. So you just get those records that you're interested in. And once that's ready, it will be available to download from that icon on the tray at the bottom. Also able to do more advanced filtering using the button on the table of contents toolbar. So again, there you can build up conditions to say which attributes you want to search against. You can save that there. That will filter down on the map. You can also filter spatially, so you can draw an area on the map. Say that you're only interested in features within that area. And you can use other layers that are loaded on the map, and you can filter down features that intersect with another layer. So if I had Neathport Talbot's boundary shown on the local authorities layer, then I could just quickly filter down, see schools that were within that area. So in addition to the tools that you've got for each layer on the map, we're also able to add additional layers from the DataMapsWales catalogue. I can search there for flood data, and then I can add any of those layers into the map. So all this at the moment is being done as a public user. So any change that I made as a member of the public here wouldn't be saved to the map. They'd just be loaded in for my session. As soon as I moved away from this page and came back, this flood storage areas layer wouldn't be on the map anymore. And if anybody else came to this page, obviously it wouldn't be on the map for them either. But with the correct account and permissions, you are able to manage your own maps and save changes that are made to them. Also able to print to PDF. Add in titles, descriptions, and that sort of thing. We've got tools to measure. So you can measure distances. You can measure areas. And you can then export those measurements or add them as a layer to the map. Got an annotations tool, which again allows you to sort of do temporary annotations that get added as a layer on the map. So the sort of classic use cases for this is something like planning applications where boundaries are digitized. So you can go in there and draw polygons or put points on the map. You can put different labels against that. You can change the style of the points. You can put text annotation on there. Again, you can print your map out with those sorts of annotations on there, but they wouldn't sort of persist in DataMapsWales unless you had an account. So I think that's sort of that's the public the public functionality. As I said, public sector organisations can request to have accounts on DataMapsWales. So at the moment, we are limiting registered users to certain organisations. Feel free to email in if you would like an account. So if you email to data@gov.wales, we can tell you whether your organisation is already sort of whitelisted to have accounts on DataMapsWales, and if not, we can, if you're a public sector organisation, we can add you to that list, and you'd then be able to to create an account, we use Government Gateway as a secured way of authenticating. So you'd have to set up a Government Gateway account with your work email, and then that will allow you access. So you can see that once I'm logged in, rather than having 500 data sets, we've got almost 3,000. So there are over 3,000 individual data sets in there at the moment, but because some of those are grouped together, then it shows slightly less in the catalogue. So again, you can see that as a registered user, you see all of the same information, but also have these additional buttons. So here, because I've got permission to manage this data set, I've also got an edit layer button. Then go into edit the metadata for the layer. So you can change things like the title, the abstract that I talked about earlier, the publication dates, and all of the other metadata fields, which license it's published under. That's the Open Government license that we mentioned. And also you can control the attribute information. So when data sets are uploaded, a lot of the time they have attribute names that aren't particularly useful. You can put aliases in there so that when somebody clicks a feature on the map, it will show the alias rather than the raw attribute name. Everything in DataMapsWales has been designed to be bilingual, so the whole site can be viewed in Welsh. All of the metadata for resources should be entered in Welsh as well as English, and the data within the spatial data sets can also be bilingual. So I'll find an example of that to show you, but if we look at the active travel map, so this is the active travel application that we've developed, and this allows local authorities to maintain their active travel networks directly in DataMapsWales. So rather than having to use their own GI systems and then uploading data to a separate system, the data is maintained directly in here. So it's sort of single source of the truth, and it gives us single national data sets for each layer in active travel. So when we look at the map here, you can see that the existing route information and the planned routes or future routes are all held. Yeah, so zoom in. See here that because I'm in English, just see the English attribute information. But if I go into the attribute table, because this is an editable layer and I've got permission to edit this data set, I have this additional button to go into edit mode on the attribute table. And as soon as I go into edit mode, You can see that there are additional fields here for the Welsh version of the comments field. So when I'm not in edit mode, I just see a single comments field, but then when I'm editing that data, I get the option to put the data in bilingually. So on this particular layer, the comments field is the only free text field, which is why that's the only one that's translated. So path design, admin area. These come from lookup tables, so it gives me all of the options that I can choose there. And those lookup tables are also bilingual, so even though I'm choosing an option in English there, we have the Welsh translation so that when the site is viewed in Welsh, the Welsh values are used. So if I go to DataMapsWales again as a public user and switch to Welsh. The thing you can do here in the catalogue is sort by different things. You can sort alphabetically, by date, or by most popular. And so here you see that attribute names are in Welsh, the attribute values are in Welsh. And if I switch to the same data set in English, you get the English aliases and the English values instead. So this active travel network maps is the public facing version of the active travel application. So the process was that the local authorities digitized their active travel network in DataMapsWales. They made all of their changes in there, and then when they were in a position to publish that map, they made a submission to Welsh Government, and then the Welsh Government active travel team checked the data within DataMapsWales, went back and forth with sort of amendments or improvements until they were happy with it. At that point, the data got approved by ministers, and the layers that are included on this public map are views of that data. So it comes from the same underlying data sets that active travel users see when they're logged in, and the data that they're editing live in DataMapsWales, but it's presented differently. So the styling of the features on the map has been simplified so that there are fewer categories, and the sort of the terminology used to describe the different types of routes are simpler for the public. We've split it down into separate layers for walking routes, cycling routes, and shared use walking and cycling routes, whereas to the active travel users, those are all on a single existing routes layer because that's easier for them to maintain. So it's having this ability to be able to manipulate data and to present it in different ways, which is really powerful within DataMapsWales. You can also see then when we click on a feature, you get a lot less attribute information as a member of the public because some of that information is not of interest to the public or not suitable for public use, sort of the survey information and the comments, which are for internal use only. So all of that is hidden. And the other neat thing about the public views of the map is that they show the data fixed at a point in time. So while all these layers in the active travel system are sort of constantly being developed, changes are being made by local authorities all the time. But for each local authority, this data on the public view is fixed at the point in time of their submissions, and it's only displayed on the map after those submissions have been approved. So you can see up in the north of Wales, there's still one local authority who are awaiting approval. So that area is just shown as grayed out, says that data is not yet approved. But as soon as that data has been submitted and approved, then that will automatically be reflected on this map. Then the other thing that's really useful is that we've got this share facility, which gives code that allows a DataMapsWales map to be embedded onto another website. So if we search for remember now which authorities have actually used it. So local authorities have either linked directly to the DataMapsWales map, the case in Neath Port Talbot there, and they're actually able to link to a specific map extent so that it opens up already zoomed in to Neath Port Talbot. Or they can actually embed the maps directly on their website. Can't remember who's done that. There we go. So Vale of Glamorgan have actually chosen just to embed the map directly. So this is the same view of that active travel public map data that we were just looking at in DataMapsWales. It's got all of the same functionality so that you can zoom in, you can click the features on the map and get that attribute information back. It's got the table of contents. So this embed functionality is something that we're working on. Make it work a little bit better and sort of allow it to have even more uses. But for active travel, it's worked really well. I think I've probably run out of time. I've taken longer than I should have looking at that. So had we better leave it there and see if there's any questions?
Thanks, Tom. That was really good. Apologies. I had major technical issues during the middle of that, so I'm hoping the recording has worked. Thank you for your time. We do have one question in the chat already around topo.json, and will that be a file format that users can download the information in the future?
Yeah, so we currently support GeoJSON as a download format. Topo.json is slightly different, a little bit more complicated, but one of the big bits of work that we're working on at the moment is putting in place something called FME, which is an ETL tool. So ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. It's a really powerful bit of software that allows data to be read and written in hundreds of different formats. The plan is that once that is in place, we're going to use it for all sorts of automated uploading of data sets into DataMapsWales, but we're also looking at replacing the download functionality in DataMapsWales so that it uses this software in the background that will allow us to support download for lots of additional data formats, and topo.json is one format that's supported. So potentially in the future, yeah. But if it's needed in the short term, then you can always email us, and we are able to provide data in other formats at the moment. It's just not part of the site.
Perfect. We've got questions coming in, so this is excellent. So is the catalogue restricted to Wales only? Is it just on a Wales footprint, or do we extend beyond?
Yeah, so there's no restriction on the extent of data sets in the catalogue. So there are some data sets that have got sort of whole UK coverage. Obviously, the majority of data sets are published by Welsh organisations and just cover Wales, but yeah, there's no actual restriction.
Fantastic. And then quite a specific one. Do you have any maps that can show indicators or data with a primary care clusters boundary layer? The person has looked but can't find any.
Okay. I think so. We definitely have. So we definitely have. I'm just searching for it now. I'm pretty sure we have primary care cluster boundaries in there, but it's not data that I'm very familiar with. Share my screen again for a second. Yeah, so we have this primary care clusters layer. Yeah, so that's currently not publicly available. But again, if you get in touch with us at data@gov.wales, we can look at making that available. So if you signed up to have an account, then we can use these permissions to make data available to individuals or groups on a kind of case-by-case basis. And it looks like that one probably will be public data at some point, but it's probably just in the process of being worked on, I think, to make it ready for public.
Excellent, perfect. So I'm sure you'll have somebody contacting you about that one. Now, as I said, I had some technical issues, so if I've got a couple of questions, really kind of basic ones, but if they have been covered, I'm really sorry, I just will have missed it. You said early on that the accounts for people to register were limited in some ways. Presumably there's no limitation on local authorities and other public sector organisations getting accounts. It's kind of wider than that, is it, where the restrictions are?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, we are whitelisting sort of organizational domain names. So I believe all of the local authority domains should already be in there.
Lovely.
And then lots of other public sector organizations already are, but if they're not, it's just because we haven't had sort of requests for them. If it's a public sector organization in Wales, there shouldn't be any issue with creating accounts for those.
And there's no restriction on the number of accounts from a single local authority or anything like that? It's not that we're restricting use to certain individuals at this point?
No, not at all. Yeah.
And then one other very basic question, and again, apologies if it's been covered already. Presumably it's not, I mean, obviously I know you've worked very, very closely with Natural Resources Wales, obviously when this was in its inception, but presumably it's not just Welsh Government data or data that you already have access to that's going into this. Are you looking to work with other organisations to get more data into the tool as it kind of develops and builds?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the more data that can be shared on there, the better. So lots of organizations are loading their data on there at the moment. We've got a couple of work areas where we're trying to get data from local authorities to then sort of create national data sets. So the local development plans are currently being worked on so that data can be fed in a sort of a common format from each local authority to create a single national data set. I mean, that's the ultimate aim, and I think that makes makes it really makes the data a lot more accessible, and sort of in terms of sort of cross-border collaboration and things, it's really good, but it's obviously a lot of work to get it to that stage. So at the moment, there's lots of data sets where local authorities are just uploading their pieces and using it for sort of internal use. But yeah,
and if there was interest in kind of curating this national data set, how would you go about that? Is that something that you as Welsh Government are going to try and say, oh, actually, look, there's 3 authorities that have loaded up similar data, albeit inconsistently, but you know, it's a similar thing. Is that something then that you would try and curate yourselves, or would you kind of expect that the local authorities themselves might come to you and go, can we work with you for all of us to load the same data? How might that go down?
Yeah, for the local development plan, it's sort of been led by Welsh Government, but I think the thinking is the ideal would be that we put the platform in place and the sort of the pathways to be able to load data up as part of a larger data set, and sort of have that ability to sort of modify schemas to fit. So I think you define a standard schema for tree protection orders or tree preservation orders, and you'd say that you need to have these columns, and then allow local authorities to be able to upload their data, and if the columns didn't match exactly, have that sort of mapping process where they can say this column slots into this one. That would be the ideal, I think. And then what we've discussed before is quite nice to almost sort of have the idea of having a lead authority maybe for a particular data set, and then they could coordinate all of that sort of stuff. The problem that we've got is same as everywhere, is that we've got quite a small team and haven't got the resources to try and lead on all of these sorts of data tasks, because it's such a lot of work involved. So I think if we could put the processes in place and work with other organizations to see what they'd need to be able to do it, and then the hope is that they'd take the lead on actually
Yeah, and absolutely, as Data Cymru, that might be, you know, there might be a role in there somewhere for us to kind of work in that middleman process from getting it from the authorities to the standardisation aspect of it, to getting it into there.
Yeah.
So that's always something to think about as well. So if anybody is interested, get in touch with both Tom and myself, and we'll see where we can go with that. So I'm conscious that we are at time now, so it just remains me to say thank you ever so much for joining us today, Tom, and for walking us through DataMapsWales. That was really useful. Hopefully the recording will be absolutely fine and won't be affected by my technical issues. And so if that's the case, then we'll obviously share that with you all as attendees, and then it'll be available on our website. As I say, we'll share the slides and the evaluation form with you after the session as well. And so, yeah, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording.